I had never fathomed that the individual closest to me would deceive me in such an inconceivable manner. At the age of 30, the stark reality hit me hard. My sister, with whom I shared my childhood, secrets, and aspirations, had committed an unforgivable act of betrayal. On a cold autumn evening, the truth unveiled itself when I saw a message on Ralph's phone, my then fiancé, who had carelessly left it on the kitchen counter. The message, glaring with its brutal truth, was from my sister, clearly not intended for a brother-in-law's eyes. My heart plummeted as I read the words, "I miss you, can't wait for our little family to be complete." The confrontation with Ralph was a whirlwind of tears and disbelief. Why her? Why my sister? I recall questioning, my voice shaking. Ralph couldn't look me in the eye, merely mumbling, "It just happened. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." His apology felt empty, a weak attempt to heal a grievously deep wound. The agony was excruciating, but the ensuing confrontation with my sister was even more so. I approached her home, consumed by anger and sorrow. As she opened the door, her eyes momentarily revealed guilt. "Is it true?" I whispered, barely audible. She nodded, eyes downcast to her evident pregnancy, admitting, "Yes, it's true." "I'm so sorry," her remorse offering little consolation. "Sorry. You ruined my life, and that's all you have to say." I couldn't hide my bitterness. She attempted to explain, "Please, it wasn't planned. I never intended to fall for Ralph." Yet, the damage was done, and she was bearing his child. Our subsequent conversation was a muddle of tears, justifications, and apologies, none of which could mend the betrayal. Leaving her place, I knew our bond was irrevocably damaged. I had lost not only my fiancé but my sister as well. In that moment, I resolved to completely sever ties with her. The weeks that followed were immensely challenging, the betrayal leaving a vast void in my heart, a blend of anger, sorrow, and a profound sense of loss engulfing me. It wasn't merely about losing Ralph but the deep betrayal by my sister that hurt most. On the day I chose to cut ties, amidst a family gathering at our parents' home, a place once symbolic of love and warmth, now overshadowed by betrayal, my mother approached me with concern. "Honey, I know you're hurt, but she's still your sister. Maybe with time." I interrupted her, bitterness in my tone, "No, Mom. There's no maybe. She's no longer my sister, not after what she's done." My father, usually reserved, offered a comforting gesture, acknowledging my pain. "But she's family, and family sticks together," he whispered gently. I shook my head, my eyes filling with tears. Family doesn't do what she did. She chose her path, and now, I'm choosing mine. I cannot, and will not, allow her in my life any longer, I declared with determination. My parents shared a sorrowful look, the significance of my declaration weighing heavily between us. Rising to my feet, I felt compelled to affirm my stance. "I expect everyone to respect my decision. I don't wish to hear about her, see her, or have her involved in my life in any capacity," I announced. My mother extended her hand towards me, her voice quivering, "But she's your sister." Cutting her off with unwavering firmness in my voice, I responded, "She was my sister. Now, she means nothing to me." A heavy silence enveloped the room as the finality of my words settled like a thick fog. Exiting the room, I recognized the closure of a significant chapter in my life. While it was a painful scene for my family to witness, for me, it was an essential step towards moving on. Driving away from the family home, I experienced a peculiar blend of relief and sadness, leaving behind a piece of my identity. Yet, deep down, I knew it was the only path to healing and rebuilding myself from the ruins of betrayal. 2 years later, life had moved forward in its unforeseen manner, leading me down paths I never anticipated, including meeting Charlie, the man who would become my husband. Charlie and I met at a friend's gathering, an event I was initially hesitant to attend, still healing from past wounds. Yet, there was something different about that night. Among the jovial atmosphere, I encountered Charlie for the first time, his warm smile and understanding eyes striking a chord within me. We connected instantly, spending hours in conversation. It was during one of these heartfelt discussions that I chose to share my past. "I've been through a tough breakup," I began tentatively, explaining the betrayal by my former fiancé and sister. Charlie listened with empathy, his reaction one of understanding, not pity. "I've known betrayal too," he confided, revealing his brother's tendency to become involved with his ex-girlfriends. Discovering someone who grasped the depth of such betrayals brought us closer, and our relationship flourished into something profound and enduring. When Charlie proposed, it was beneath a starlit sky at the very spot where we first met, his words imbued with deep emotion. "You've illuminated my life in unimaginable ways," he expressed, his voice choked with feeling, as he asked, "Will you marry me?" Tears of happiness streamed down my face as I accepted, marking the beginning of a new chapter filled with hope and healing. Tears streamed down my face as I nodded, whispering, "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." Our wedding was a small, intimate affair, surrounded by those who truly mattered. As I walked down the aisle, my heart felt lighter than it had in years. The pain of the past lingered, but it was now overshadowed by the hope of a new beginning. Charlie and I welcomed 3 beautiful children into our lives, who became a constant source of joy and laughter, filling our home with love and warmth. In those moments, whether holding my children or gazing into Charlie's loving eyes, I realized the distance I had traveled. The betrayal that once seemed to end my world had become a distant memory, leading me to this new life filled with love, trust, and happiness I once thought lost forever. Life with Charlie and our children was blissful, contrasting sharply with the turmoil of my past. However, the world outside our little haven continued to spin, bringing unavoidable news of my sister and Ralph. One evening, as Charlie and I tucked the kids into bed, he mentioned, "I heard something about Ralph today. He's had a serious accident at work." I paused, a complex mix of emotions surfacing. "Oh? And how did you hear about this?" I inquired. "Lee from the office, you remember, he's Ralph's colleague," Charlie explained. "And my sister?" I asked, part of me reluctant to know, yet another part, still seeing her as my sister, cared despite everything. "She's struggling, to say the least. With Ralph's disability and her own health issues, things aren't great for them," Charlie said with understanding. I sighed deeply, conflicted. "Thank you for telling me, Charlie." The news of their difficulties stirred something within me. Despite the pain and betrayal, I couldn't fully dismiss that she was once my sister, someone I loved and cared for. Yet, the wound remained, a reminder of the boundary she had crossed. A few days later, my mother called, her voice hesitant. "Dear, I know you don't want to hear about her, but your sister is in a bad place right now. With Ralph's condition, they're struggling even to feed the girls," she said softly. My heart tugged, thinking of the innocent children caught in this situation. "I need to think about this, Mom. I can't promise anything." After the call, I sat down with Charlie, sharing my conflicted thoughts. "They're innocent in all of this, Charlie, the kids. But helping them means reopening a door I closed a long time ago." Charlie took my hand, offering comfort. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember, you owe them nothing. Your first responsibility is to yourself and to our family." His words soothed me, reminding me of the new life I had built. I had crafted a life far from the shadows of my past. Lying awake that night, I grappled with a seemingly impossible decision. My heart ached for the children, but was it worth risking the peace I had ardently fought to achieve? The dilemma of whether to assist my sister and her family loomed large over me. Charlie, noticing my unrest, frequently inquired about my well-being, but I struggled to convey the turmoil within. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, the phone rang. It was my father, his voice bearing a weariness unfamiliar to me. "Your sister and Ralph are in a tight spot. They've asked if we could take in the girls for a while," he conveyed. A knot formed in my stomach. "And what did you say?" I queried. "We're considering it, but they wondered if you and Charlie might assist," he answered. I fell silent, processing his words. "Dad, I don't think I can do that," I hesitated. There was a pause. "I understand, but remember, they're just kids. They shouldn't pay for their parents' mistakes," he urged gently. "I know, Dad, but it's not just about the kids. It's everything she did, everything she took from me," I responded, my voice laden with emotion. "We just thought, maybe, for the sake of family," he trailed off. "Dad, some wounds are too deep. I'm sorry, I can't," I concluded, hanging up amidst a swirl of frustration and guilt. Charlie reached across the table, his hand covering mine. "It's okay to say no. You've been through a lot," he reassured. I nodded, thankful for his support yet still tormented by the decision. Days later, my sister directly reached out, her message appearing on my social media. "I know what happened between us, but I need you. The girls need you. We're family, after all," she pleaded. The word family echoed in my mind, a concept that had lost its meaning when she betrayed me. I replied, my fingers typing with a resolve that even surprised me. "What we had as a family ended a long time ago. I'm sorry, but I can't help you." She responded quickly, her words tinged with bitterness. "How can you be so cold? They are just kids. They have their parents and grandparents. I have my own family to consider," I wrote back, my heart racing with a mix of emotions. The exchange left me drained. Rejecting my parents was one thing, but denying my sister directly was quite another. Yet, I knew in my heart it was the right decision. My loyalty was to the family I had built, the family that stood by me when my world crumbled. That night, as I tucked my children into bed, their innocent faces reminded me of the stark contrast to the adult world's complexity. I knew I had made the right choice. My duty was to protect them, to ensure their world remained untouched by the shadows of my past. Despite everything, I remained steadfast in my decision, prioritizing the well-being and stability of the family I had lovingly built. Despite my explicit message on social media, my sister refused to accept my refusal. Days later, she attempted to reach me again, this time through a direct and more personal method. I was preparing dinner when the familiar tone of an incoming video call sounded. With hesitation, I accepted the call, and there she was, my sister, her face etched with stress and worry. "Please, I'm begging you, we're at our wits' end here. Ralph can barely move, and I'm struggling to keep up with everything," she pleaded, her voice cracking with desperation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "I told you already, I can't help you." "I'm sorry," I responded. "But we're sisters," she insisted, tears welling up in her eyes. "Remember how we used to dream of our future together? How we promised to always be there for each other? That was a long time ago, before you made your choice," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She fell silent for a moment, then said, "It's not just about us anymore. It's about the girls. Don't they deserve a chance?" I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memories of betrayal. "They do deserve a chance, but not at the cost of my family's peace. You have other people who can help," I replied, as she sobbed openly, her face a portrait of anguish. "I never meant to hurt you like this. I was just lost," she managed between sobs. "We all make choices, and we have to live with the consequences," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. The call ended with her in tears and me in a state of emotional exhaustion. I turned off my phone, not wanting any more intrusions into the life I had painstakingly rebuilt. Charlie found me sitting at the kitchen table, my head in my hands. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I looked up at him, grateful for his presence. "It was my sister. She's trying to guilt me into helping them," I explained. He sat down beside me, taking my hands in his. "You don't owe her anything. You've suffered enough because of her actions. It's okay to think of yourself," he reassured me. I nodded, drawing strength from his words. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that my sister's pleas had only strengthened my resolve. I had moved on, and I couldn't let the ghosts of my past disrupt the life I had so carefully built. The decision to stay away from her was not just a choice, but a necessity for my own well-being and for the sake of my family. My decision to not help my sister and her family was met with mixed reactions from my family. Some understood my stance, but others, particularly my extended family, viewed it as heartless. The subject came up during a family gathering at my parents' house, a setting that once felt like a refuge but now seemed more like a battleground. As we sat around the dinner table, my aunt, always one to speak her mind, broached the topic. "I can't believe you're turning your back on your own niece and nephew. They're just children," she said. I felt all eyes on me, the weight of their judgment heavy in the air. "It's not a decision I made lightly," I started, trying to keep my voice calm. "But there's a lot of history there that can't be ignored." "But they are innocent in all of this," my uncle chimed in. "Shouldn't they be spared from the sins of their parents?" I understand that, and I sympathize with them. But being involved with my sister again, even indirectly, is something I can't handle. "It's a boundary I've set for my own well-being," I explained. My mother, always the peacemaker, tried to soften the atmosphere. "Let's not forget what she went through. This isn't an easy situation for anyone." The conversation shifted, but the tension lingered. Later, in the kitchen, my cousin approached me. "I get that you're hurt, but don't you think this grudge has gone on long enough? She's family, after all." I leaned against the counter, feeling a familiar frustration rise within me. "It's not just a grudge. What she did changed everything. I've moved on, and I can't go back to that dark place again," I said. My cousin shrugged, a clear sign of disagreement, and walked away. As Charlie and I drove home that night, the silence in the car was a stark contrast to the cacophony of the family dinner. He finally broke the silence. "Your family means well, but they don't fully understand what you went through, and that's okay. You don't have to justify your feelings to anyone." His words were a balm, soothing the sting of the evening's events. I realized then that family isn't just about blood relations, it's about who stands by you, understands your pain, and respects your decisions. Charlie was my family, and with him, I had found a haven of understanding and acceptance. The backlash from my relatives was just noise compared to the symphony of support I had in him. The aftermath of the family gathering left me in a contemplative mood. I found solace in the nursery, watching my children sleep peacefully, unaware of the complexities of adult relationships. Charlie joined me, wrapping his arm around my shoulder. "You've been quiet since we got back," he observed softly. I sighed, leaning into his embrace. "It's just, everyone thinks I'm being unreasonable, but they don't understand how deep the hurt goes. They might never fully understand, and that's okay. You have every right to protect yourself and our family." His words were a reminder of the safe haven we had built together. Yet, the family's words echoed in my mind, stirring a whirlpool of doubt and guilt. A few days later, I found myself at my parents' house, helping my mom with some chores. She seized a quiet moment to speak her mind. "You know, your sister called me crying the other day," she said, her voice tinged with concern. I paused, the dishcloth in my hand momentarily still. "Mama, she's really struggling, and those kids. My mom's voice trailed off, laden with unspoken pleas. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I know it's hard, Mom, but I have to think about my mental health, too. Being around her, even indirectly, would bring back a lot of pain, I explained. My mom reached out, touching my hand gently. I understand, dear. I just wish things were different. So do I, Mom. So do I whispered, feeling a familiar ache in my heart. That conversation with my mom stayed with me for days. It wasn't just about making a choice, it was about standing by it, even when it was questioned by those closest to me. One evening, while putting the kids to bed, my eldest asked, Mommy, why don't we ever see Auntie? Her question caught me off guard. Well, honey, sometimes people have disagreements, and it's better for them to stay apart, I explained. Like when I don't want to play with Tommy because he took my toy. Something like that, I replied, tucking her in. Lying in bed later that night, I thought about my daughter's innocent question. My decision not only affected me but also the perception of my children. It was a sobering thought, but I knew I had to stand my ground for the sake of my own well-being and for the healthy environment I wanted for my children. They deserved a mother who was whole, not fragmented by the ghosts of her past. As days turned into weeks, the initial storm of family opinions gradually settled into a quiet but persistent hum in the background of our lives. Despite the support from Charlie and the joy our children brought, there were moments when doubt crept in, whispering what-ifs and could-have-beens. One such evening, while the kids were at a sleepover and Charlie and I were enjoying a quiet dinner, he broached the subject that had been lingering in the air. You've been distant lately. Is it about your sister again? He asked, his eyes reflecting a mix of concern and understanding. I put down my fork, the truth spilling out. Part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh, but then I remember the pain, the betrayal, and I just can't bring myself to face her, not even for the sake of her kids. Charlie reached across the table, taking my hand. It's okay to have these feelings, you're human. But don't forget, you made this decision for valid reasons. Your peace of mind is important, too. I nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. I know, it's just hard when your own family questions your choices. We can't control what others think or feel, but we can control how we react and how we let it affect us and our family, he said gently. His words were a gentle reminder of the strength I had found in myself and in our life together. The path I had chosen was not an easy one, but it was one that prioritized my healing and the well-being of the family Charlie and I had built. A few days later, during a phone call with my dad, he hesitantly mentioned my sister again. I just thought you should know, your sister's been asking about you. She's worried, despite everything, he said softly. I felt a twinge in my heart, but the resolve was still strong. Tell her I'm fine, Dad. But that's all, please. I don't want any more messages or updates, I said, a sense of finality in my voice. Hanging up the phone, I realized that while the past would always be a part of me, it did not define me. My choices, difficult as they were, had led me to a place of growth and newfound strength. I had learned to prioritize my own well-being and that of my immediate family. Though the future was uncertain and the path to forgiveness unclear, I found comfort in the love and stability that surrounded me now. Months had passed since I last heard from my sister. Life with Charlie and our children continued to be a source of joy and stability. Yet, the echoes of the past still resonated, a reminder of the journey I had been on. One sunny afternoon, while watching the kids play in the backyard, Charlie joined me with 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one and smiled. You seem more at peace these days, he remarked. I took a sip, feeling the warmth of the coffee and his presence. I am. It's been a journey, but I think I'm finally learning to let go of the past. That's good to hear. You know, no matter what, I'm proud of how you've handled everything, he said, his eyes full of admiration. I leaned against him, grateful for his unwavering support. Thanks, Charlie. I couldn't have done it without you. As we sat in comfortable silence, I reflected on the changes within me. The bitterness and pain had faded, replaced by a sense of acceptance and inner peace. It wasn't about forgetting the past, but about choosing not to let it control my present and future. Later that week, while sorting through some old boxes, I came across a photo of my sister and me in our younger days. For the first time in a long while, I looked at it without the sting of betrayal. Instead, there was a recognition of the bond we once shared and an acknowledgement of the separate paths we had taken. That evening, as Charlie and I put the kids to bed, our youngest asked, "Mommy, do you have a sister?" I paused, tucking her in. "Yes, honey, I do. But sometimes, even with family, people grow apart." "Will you ever see her again?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. I kissed her forehead, a bittersweet smile on my lips. "Maybe one day, sweetie. But for now, we have our own happy little family, and that's what matters." As I turned off the lights, I realized how far I had come. The journey through pain and betrayal had led me to a place of strength and resilience. My family, Charlie and our children, were my anchor, my source of unconditional love and support. Lying in bed that night, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter of my life involving my sister would always be a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had progressed, not merely moved on, and through this journey, I gained a profound insight into my own identity and the true essence of life. My heart was filled with tranquility, aware that the future was bright with potential and optimism. I stood prepared to welcome whatever lay ahead, with the unwavering support of my cherished family beside me.